What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. New adventures coming out in Hearthstone is fun for casual players, legend grinders, really just everybody, and adventures are definitely one of the things that make Hearthstone such an awesome and really unique card game experience. All of the adventures that have come out so far have been based on World of Warcraft raids or sort of areas in the case of Blackrock Mountain, and pretty heavily focused on World of Warcraft lore in the Warcraft universe, so it's not that difficult to try and predict what future expansions could potentially be released in the future. And today we're doing exactly that, so without further ado, let's take a look at some potential expansions that could exist in the future of Hearthstone. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and let's begin. So one adventure a lot of people have speculated that we could potentially see in the future is Zul'Gurub, which is a troll-themed World of Warcraft raid with a 20-player limit. Although it was actually removed as a raid and then later re-added as like a heroic mode instance, Zul'Gurub actually has a lot of really rich, story and lore, and Hearthstone already features a lot of troll, a lot of Gurubashi characters, making Zul'Gurub a pretty awesome potential candidate for a future expansion. So let's take a look at some potential bosses from the raid, maybe how they might translate over into Hearthstone potentially. So the first boss in Zul'Gurub is High Priest Riousx. He's the priest of a snake god Arthas, and he transforms into a cobra partway through the encounter. Now, while we don't usually see adventure bosses changing forms unless they're maybe like the final boss of the encounter, a transforming boss or one with like a changing hero power is definitely something we could see in the adventure encounter. Additionally, one of Riousx's abilities is a poison maze, so that could be something that could work really well in Hearthstone, something that pops up on the game board. Maybe you can only attack certain minions or with certain minions, or they run into a wall of poison and die. The next boss, Bloodlord Mandakir, rides on a raptor, which could potentially be a card or maybe part of his hero power. Bloodlord Mandakir can also instant kill characters, but there are 8 spirits nearby where you fight him that come and resurrect people if they're killed this way. It's really likely that the spirits would be super involved in the encounter, and this could work really well in an adventure. His hero power maybe one-shots you or your minions or something, but he can't use the hero power as long as you have a minion or the minions representing the spirits alive or something, maybe like the Thoris and Moira encounter in Blackrock Mountain, but like in reverse or something. It could be really cool to play, that's for sure. The next boss, High Priestess Kilnara, uses shadow magic and starts with 16 panthers in the room with her. It could be super easy to see her using, warlock class cards, maybe starting the game with some panthers spawned, or having a hero power that spawns a bunch of panthers, something like that. Next up, we've got Zanzil, which is a boss that resurrects his minions and does some other really powerful things that can be stopped using a series of colored cauldrons that are red, blue, and green. So this fight might involve maybe a pre-made deck or some sort of helper that gives you like cauldron cards, which could be the key to beating Zanzil. Now the final boss of Zul'Gurub is Jindo the Godbreaker, and he has a ton of different attacks and transformations that would make him a perfect final boss for any Hearthstone adventure encounter. As far as the reward cards go, a great amount of them could be trolls or maybe troll themed or stuff like that, since Hearthstone definitely does need more troll representation. But there's maybe too little of them to base a full-sized expansion around them, so maybe Zul'Gurub would have to be combined with another raid or instance. Now another adventure a lot of people would definitely expect that we could see in the future, one that I think and would personally love to see, is Ulduar. A lot of people suggest that maybe we won't necessarily go to Ulduar anymore, since in Ulduar the end boss of the raid is Yogg-Saron, and now we have a Yogg-Saron card in the game. But that's not really a good argument, because Ragnaros was a key part of the Blackrock Mountain adventure when he already had a card in the game, so that's definitely not a valid concern. So as for the Ulduar raid in World of Warcraft, what could that expansion look like? Ulduar is just this Titan city in the Storm Peaks, a mountain range known for its super powerful, dangerous winds. Ulduar is also where Yogg-Saron happens to be imprisoned below it, and there's so many potential awesome cards and just super awesome raid fights and encounters and, bosses and stuff, and Ulduar is this absolutely gigantic raid, so unlike Zul'Gurub, it doesn't really face the problem of potentially being maybe a little bit too small to be an adventure all by itself. As for some cards that we could see at this adventure, maybe we could see some more giants, maybe stuff that doesn't really fit the current Hearthstone model for giants, something that's a lot different to, this is an 8/8 that costs a lot of mana, and the ability reduces its cost based on something, some sort of like new quirks or mechanics or something like that that could definitely help diversify the game a little bit. Additionally, you'd also see a lot of dwarves, a lot of mechanical constructs, so maybe we could see some more mechs added into the game. And for the final boss, maybe we get some alternate Yogg-Saron card, or maybe some good follow-up to like the Wrath of the Old Gods kind of thing. And since Yogg-Saron's now on the loose, maybe some other horror's taken over Ulduar and we get a new villain instead. Whatever the case, Ulduar is definitely something that would provide an awesome amount of content both as an adventure and as a source of new cards being introduced, and I would place it as probably one of the most likely adventures to be released in the future. Now we could also take a look and analyze some more raids and their bosses and stuff like that, but there's also a lot more theories that we might get a Hearthstone adventure based on some of the Warcraft 3 lore, and a lot of these involve following Arthas on his path to madness and, playing first as a paladin and then transforming into a Death Knight and potentially unlocking the Death Knight class. While there's maybe a lot of reasons that it's definitely very unlikely that we'll get a new class in Hearthstone at this point, there is still a chance, however small it kind of is, and that chance only gets bigger and bigger as Blizzard tries to keep the game fresh several years down the line. So I would definitely expect them to release a new class like many years from now. Not anytime soon, but definitely in the far out future. So it's definitely something we can take a look at. The first swing in this kind of adventure might focus on like Arthas' fight against the Scourge and Mal'Ganis and stuff like that, maybe reward some neutral minions or something. For this part of the adventure, maybe you play as Arthas with like a pre-constructed paladin deck, and along the way you fight bosses, you get help from your allies like Jaina, Uther, all the other guys, stuff like that. You could also fight against the legions of undead, featuring bosses like Kel'Thuzad in his necromancer form, orc chieftains that are summoning demons, and of course the famous Purge encounter where Arthas was forced to kill innocent villagers before they turned into the undead because of the plague. And this could definitely make for a super fun encounter where you have to kill your own minions before they become undead and start fighting against you or something like that. Something that could be really fun to play with. The final fight of the first part of the adventure could have you fighting Mal'Ganis as well, but in the end you have to sacrifice your own troops and your own friend Myrddin Bronzebeard in order to come out on top. And at that point, Arthas transforms into the Death Knight, you unlock the class, and then the second half of the adventure begins. Or maybe it's like some super adventure where you have like a bunch of different wings, like 6 wings or something like that, or something that's really long, And at this point, after you become a Death Knight, you fight against the humans and elves in order to resurrect Kel'Thuzad, you obtain all the necessary artifacts and stuff, you summon Archimonde, you gain Frostmourne, all sorts of stuff. And this part of the adventure could be really long, and each victory would reward you with some sweet ass Death Knight cards, since the class would need to catch up to how many class cards each other class really has, right? The first encounter of the adventure could also involve Arthas having to maybe find acolytes without alerting the enemy hero, could allow for some cool stealth encounters and stuff like that. Oh man, there's so much possibilities, After that, maybe fight some paladins, maybe some high elves, does all the stuff he needs to resurrect Kel'Thuzad, and after Kel'Thuzad turns into the Lich, he helps you with all the following battles, and the final boss fight is holding off the army of elves and humans for a certain amount of time while Kel'Thuzad resurrects Archimonde, who would maybe have to be a neutral legendary, despite fitting quite well in Warlocks, since adventures don't really give classes legendaries. But while this type of adventure is definitely very, very, very unlikely in the near future, because, Blizzard definitely doesn't want to add more classes into the game yet, it could honestly be one of the coolest adventures ever as far as ideas go, and it definitely wouldn't be too hard for Blizzard to make. They've already got the story, they got all the resources from Warcraft 3, and introducing new classes is something that we would definitely expect to see, 5, maybe 10 years down the line potentially. Either way though, it's super cool to think about alternatives to adventures only being from World of Warcraft raids, because you have to imagine, they're not going to have every adventure be a WoW raid forever, That's something they're starting to do with like Mean Streets of Gadgetzan. They're kind of branching off into their own stories or kind of concepts or stuff like that, or, doing stuff that's not so cookie cutter of just, we take this thing from World of Warcraft and put it into Hearthstone, and something like that is something that could be really fun to see in the future, and I would love to play that kind of expansion. I think it'd be really awesome. Either way though, those are some of our thoughts on potential Hearthstone expansions for the future. Definitely let us know what you guys think in the comments section below, and either way, it looks like that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.